I have a general question.
Yeah.
Are there multiple types of preambles for a LaTeX document, or
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
why? And how do you know which?
Do you remember Henry Ford?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, there's somebody at the door. They're ringing the doorbell.
Yeah. Steve, I would just comment on the issue of preambles. This is the part of the document where you specify things that relate to the appearance and the identification of the document. So it has the author, the title, the date, the font family you want to use, a style for the particular document that might relate to a particular publisher, and so on. And so that's where the many, many thousands of LaTeX packages come in. After the begin document command, until the end document command, things are pretty much standard LaTeX, except for the use of additional markup that's introduced by the packages.
Oh.
You know, for example, if you include the hyperref package, you can now get hyperlinks into your document, but you have to put \URL around the URL in order for that to be identified and turned into a hyperlink in the PDF file. And if you didn't include the hyperref package, it wouldn't know what that macro was and would complain that it is an unknown quantity. So yes, there is. You could pretty much rely on every preamble of documents being unique, except possibly within, say, journal publication, where the publisher might supply a standard preamble for every article and require the authors adhere to it. Because in a journal case, the author is permitted to change the fonts. That's a journal design feature. But in a document that you're writing for yourself, you may pick a different font on different days of the week.
Wow.
I quite enjoy reading material in different fonts. I get, frankly, quite annoyed with people who 40 years later are still using Computer Modern because it happens to be the default font.
I mean, I regularly write drafts just using the standard LaTeX classes. And then when I decide, okay, it should go to that journal, just use their class. And usually it just works out of the box. I don't have to change anything I've written, but it could change the appearance quite dramatically. I mean, that's the idea.
Right. And you're fortunate.
Is that there's really no standardization of all of the front matter stuff. So more than one author, how they're grouped, email, institutional affiliation, off-print requests, email, funding, everybody rolls their own.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're fortunate, Philip, that you work in physics where, like mathematics, tech has been widely adopted and nobody would seriously consider other systems. But if you work in other fields, chemistry, biology, the humanities, what the publishers are often expecting to receive are word processor documents. And so there's a great deal more variety there, and life is much more difficult.
Yeah.
The preamble is one of the most troublesome parts of a LaTeX document. And I relate it to garbage in, garbage out. Now, if you put a use package A, B, C, D, E, F, and there is no such package, then your document won't compile successfully because it's not there. And so everything you add to the preamble adds to the dependencies, and it adds to what's permitted in the document. Now, one of the difficulties is that somebody writes a package called A, B, C, D, E, F, and it does the typesetting beautifully, but nobody has done the work to get the accessibility required. So, and beginners often have difficulty, even experts have difficulty with the preamble because the order in which you put things matters. And the idea that every document is so important that it should have its own individual preamble seems to be a little perverse. certainly if you're in a sort of production environment and you want this week's menu to look very much like last week's menu, and we're not in a restaurant business, we're in the business of educating people and producing accessible lecture notes. So why not have a fixed preamble that works for everything? And that fits well. It also fits well with what the big publishers are doing. Elsevier has, last time I checked, one document type definition. A document type definition is a bit like a preamble. It says what markup can appear in the document. And Elsevier has one document type definition for all its journals.
Really? Okay.
Okay. And that allows them to define what garbage is and is not. The document type definition is a definition of what's allowed markup and what's not allowed markup.
Wow.
And because they only have one of them, they can have tools. It's well understood, and they have tools that work to that standard. Whereas every different preamble gives you a different document type definition in principle.
Yeah,
And that's fine if all you're out to do is produce unique PDFs. But if you want to get the accessible outputs, that's different. And this goes back to what I was saying about the Tech Live point of view, which is we don't know what you want to do, so we'll give you everything you might possibly want to do. Give you the tools for that. And it's up to you to choose from those 2 gigabytes. Whereas the portable tech document says, well, I've written this really nice document and the preamble and everything else and all the parts work together well, and it does really well for my purpose, which is such and such. So why don't you have my document and you can edit my document and run it in exactly the same way with exactly the same preamble, with exactly the same laws of transformation.
I'd like to interject something here about the publisher point of view, as in the example of Elsevier. Back in the 90s, one of the big publishers gave a talk at a tech user group meeting that I attended. And the question of a consistent common markup came up. And they pointed out that in their industry, in some fields, they're able to take a previously sold document and extract automatically portions of that document and use them in other documents so that they can produce perhaps 25 distinct documents completely automatically from that original. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means the payment was done on the original. The following processing is totally free. So they've paid for the production of one document, and roughly 25 more are pure profit. And so this makes a great deal of sense in the industry if you can reuse material automatically, because computer time is effectively free these days. So that's why it is really so important to think, if you're dealing with a large corpus of text, you do want to have common markup so that common tools can process it and extract pieces from it and do useful things.
Are there any unique fields in the preamble for LaTeX documents containing mathematics, or doesn't it make any difference what the content is?
No, it does, because there's the AMS fonts and AMS symbols, AMS math packages that add additional markup beyond the LaTeX book that was published in the 80s. Now, I would say at the undergraduate level, almost none of that material is ever going to be used. So you can still produce a tremendous amount of mathematics at the high school and undergraduate level that needs just standard LaTeX markup. It's when you want to get fancy things like multi-column typesetting, tables that span multiple pages, tables that align items on decimal points instead of just right or left and so on, then you need considerable extra package support.
Got it. Thanks. This is all very interesting. You're giving me an education.
Yeah, the amazing thing I think about LaTeX is that the tech typesetting engine and the Metafont font design system are both about 20,000 lines of Pascal. But especially in the case of tech and LaTeX, we now have millions of lines of code that balance on this rock solid 20,000 lines of Pascal that's translated to C and compiled.
Jeez.
So that we have thousands and thousands of packages available for people to do specialized things. And tech has been used in probably every country of the world for languages that go left to right, right to left, up and down. And when they go up and down, do they go from the left of the page or the right of the page? All of these are catered for and handled quite nicely if you have the appropriate engine modifications.
Wow.
So
And those
it's
20,000 lines of
enormously flexible system.
are really still, you know, state of the art.
Yeah. So, and if you go into the word processor community, well, you get a view of technology that the designers have offered you at that point, and next year it'll probably be different. But I'm skeptical that most word processors could handle the breadth of applications that tech has demonstrated it can. And of course, with Unicode, we have an additional substantial layer of complexity because of the fact that although Western European languages are typeset left to right with individual character glyphs, there are other languages around the planet that are typeset in different directions and that do funny things. So the string ABCD in a word in Hindi might be typeset with the letters rearranged in the word. And that's handled by going down to the Unicode library layer and rearranging letters. So there's an enormous complexity involved in some languages, Arabic and Urdu. Urdu is largely an Arabic script with a few extra characters, but distinguished from it by the letters being traditionally written from right to left as Arabic is. But instead of being on a line, they're at about a 30-degree slant.
Really? Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
So this is, and the peculiarity of Arabic, Persian, and Urdu typesetting is that when you justify text to fill a line, you don't do so by putting spaces between the words. You do so by stretching certain letters. So a letter that has a long stroke like this, that stroke can be lengthened. And that's how, for example, the Quran is typeset. The Quran also adds another requirement that there must not be a complete line, an incomplete line on any page. So not only do you have to justify the paragraph, you have to ensure that every paragraph is filled to the right, or in the case of Arabic, to the left of the line. So
Is
I
that
doubt
interesting?
processors would have any possibility of dealing with this kind of thing.
Wow.